As of April 16, 2026, the geopolitical architecture of the Middle East hangs on a knife edge. Following the collapse of the marathon 21-hour Islamabad talks on April 12, the international community has shifted its gaze to Tehran, where a high-level Pakistani delegation is attempting to salvage a framework for peace. This mission, led by Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff, COAS, Field Marshal Asim Munir, and Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi, represents a last-ditch effort to prevent a resumption of the full-scale hostilities that characterized the 12-day war of 2025 and the subsequent 2026 military escalations. The primary friction point remains Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, HEU. Current intelligence estimates and International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, reports indicate that Tehran possesses approximately 440 to 450 kilograms of uranium enriched to the 60% level. Expert consensus suggests this material is currently stored in reinforced subterranean facilities, some of which, notably at Fordow and Isfahan, were damaged during previous U.S.-Israeli kinetic operations. From a strategic standpoint, 440 kilograms of 60% HEU is a breakout quantity. In its current form, it has no viable civilian application. However, if further refined to 90%, it provides the fissile core for at least 10 to 12 nuclear warheads. This threshold status is the leverage Tehran is utilizing to extract concessions, while the Trump administration views it as an existential threat to regional stability. The negotiations over the weekend in Islamabad brought U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance face-to-face with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Despite what Vance described as significant progress, the talks stalled on two critical durations. Washington is demanding a 20-year moratorium on all domestic uranium enrichment within Iran. Furthermore, the U.S. insists on the total dismantlement of the Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan facilities and the physical removal of the 440-kilogram HEU stockpile to a third-party territory, likely Russia or a neutral EU state. Tehran has offered a 5-year suspension of enrichment, insisting on its inalienable right under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, to maintain a peaceful program. Crucially, the Iranians reject the removal of their stockpile, proposing instead to downblend the material to 5%, low-enriched uranium, under IAEA supervision within Iranian borders. President Donald Trump, speaking from the White House, expressed dissatisfaction with the length of the proposed moratorium, stating, "I've been saying they can't have nuclear weapons, so I don't like the 20 years. I don't want them to feel like they have a win." His administration's stance is one of maximum leverage, underscored by the naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which took effect on April 13th. The humanitarian and economic stakes are compounded by a 2-week ceasefire, announced on April 8th, which is set to expire on April 22nd. In the interim, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet has implemented a blockade on all traffic to and from Iranian ports. Reports confirm that U.S. warships recently intercepted the Chinese-owned tanker Rich Starry, signaling Washington's willingness to disrupt global energy markets to enforce its terms. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghai has confirmed that message exchanges between Iran and the U.S. via Pakistan are ongoing, emphasizing that the level and type of uranium enrichment can be discussed within the framework of the country's needs. Behind the curtain, however, the rhetoric remains sharp. President Trump warned on Fox Business that U.S. forces could take out every one of their bridges and power plants in 1 hour if a deal is not reached before the ceasefire expires. In the cold calculus of international relations, the Islamabad Protocol is not merely a nuclear negotiation. It is a structural struggle over the hegemony of the Persian Gulf. As a senior strategic analyst, I view the current impasse through 3 distinct lenses: transactional realism, the choke point dilemma, and the credibility of the deterrent. The emergence of Pakistan, specifically its military leadership under Field Marshal Asim Munir, as the primary mediator is a masterstroke of pragmatic diplomacy. Pakistan possesses a unique tri-directional leverage. It is a nuclear-armed neighbor of Iran, a long-term strategic partner of the United States, and a critical node in China's Belt and Road Initiative. Munir's presence in Tehran signals that this is a military-to-military channel, bypassing the often stymied civilian diplomatic bureaucracies. For Pakistan, the motivation is existential. A full-scale U.S.-Iran war would destabilize its western border and spark a refugee crisis it cannot afford. For the U.S., Pakistan provides a deniable channel that allows the Trump administration to maintain a tough-on-Tehran public image while engaging in the granular compromises necessary for a deal. The Trump administration's approach represents a radical departure from the 2015 JCPOA. Whereas the Obama-era deal sought to integrate Iran into a multilateral framework, the current strategy is purely transactional and bilateral. The U.S. is utilizing the financial equivalent of a bombing campaign, the naval blockade, to force a bankrupt and militarily degraded Tehran into a buyback of its own sovereignty. However, the 20-year versus 5-year debate reveals a deeper strategic disconnect. The U.S. is seeking a permanent solution to the Iranian nuclear question, while Tehran is looking for a strategic reprieve to rebuild its economy and air defenses. Behind the curtain, the Iranian leadership, now under the shadow of the 2025 assassinations of senior figures, is playing for time. They recognize that a 5-year deal carries them past the next U.S. election cycle, whereas a 20-year deal represents a generational surrender of their nuclear deterrent potential. The most complex variable in this equation is not the uranium, but the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's demand to maintain control and collect toll fees as war reparations is a direct challenge to the freedom of navigation principle that has underpinned global trade since 1945. Tehran's logic is simple: if they cannot export oil, no one will. By threatening to transform the world's most vital energy choke point into a toll road, they are attempting to outsource the cost of their reconstruction to the global community. The U.S. blockade is the countermove. It is a siege designed to prove that Iran's control of the Strait is a myth. We must not overlook the silent partner in these talks, Israel. The 2025 strikes proved that Jerusalem is willing to act unilaterally if it perceives a bad deal. Any compromise that allows Iran to keep 440 kilograms of HEU on its soil, even if downblended, will likely be viewed by the Israeli security establishment as an unacceptable threshold status. If the Islamabad Protocol fails to remove the stockpile entirely, the probability of an Israeli surgical strike increases exponentially as the April 22nd ceasefire deadline approaches. This creates a dual-track pressure on Iranian negotiators. They must satisfy Trump's transactional demands while ensuring they do not trigger Netanyahu's begin doctrine, the policy of preemptive strikes to prevent any regional rival from acquiring WMDs. Should a compromise be reached, likely a 10-year moratorium with the HEU converted to fuel plates rather than removed, it will signal a fundamental shift in the Middle Eastern power balance. We are witnessing the birth of a containment through commerce model. The U.S. is signaling that it is willing to tolerate the existence of the Islamic Republic, provided its regional reach, proxies in Lebanon and Yemen, is severed and its nuclear fangs are pulled. For Iran, this is a survival deal. The loss of their Air Force and Navy in 2025 has stripped them of their conventional deterrent. Their only remaining cards are the nuclear stockpile and their influence over the resistance axis. If they trade the former for a lifting of sanctions, they effectively become a contained regional power, ending the revolutionary era of their foreign policy. The most likely outcome is a Phase 1 agreement by April 20th. This will likely involve a temporary extension of the ceasefire in exchange for the immediate neutralization, down-blending, of the first 100 kilograms of HEU. Both sides need a win. Trump needs a great deal before the November midterms, and Tehran needs to keep the lights on. Power abhors a vacuum, and in the current Middle East, the vacuum is being filled by Pakistani-mediated transactionalism. The era of the grand bargain is dead. We have entered the era of the strategic reprieve. The next 96 hours will determine whether the Middle East will move toward a fragile peace or descend into a new, more devastating conflict. We will continue to monitor developments in Tehran and naval activity in the Strait of Hormuz. This is the Global Report Program. Information is power. Use it wisely.